What you consistently hear is that a lot of young women feel like they don't have options. I saw this with my own wife, who's a working mother, who's a very, very accomplished litigator.
Sometimes the most powerful moments in a parent's life unfold when no one's expecting it. For JD and Usha Vance, that moment hit like a wave, beautiful, emotional, and completely unforgettable. Their daughter, once tucked quietly into the background of public life, made a transformation so striking that it brought both parents to tears. It wasn't just a milestone, it was a revelation, one that turned an ordinary day into something deeply personal and profoundly moving. So, what changed? And why did it touch them so deeply? Let's dive in. It was January 20th, and the Capitol Rotunda in Washington, D.C. was alive with anticipation. J.D. Vance stood with his right hand raised, preparing to take the oath as the 50th Vice President of the United States. The cameras zoomed in, the crowd hushed, and the gravity of the moment settled in the air. But just as the ceremonial words began, something gently shifted the nation's attention, not away from politics, but toward something far more personal. Cradled. In her mother's arms, 3-year-old Mirabelle Vance quietly stole the spotlight. Wrapped in a tiny winter coat and decorated with playful, cartoon-themed band-aids on her fingers, Mirabelle sucked her thumb, unfazed by the historic weight surrounding her. The public and press, expecting the usual formalities, instead found themselves captivated by the youngest member of the Vance family, whose innocent presence softened the edge of a politically charged day. The contrast between the formality of the occasion and the raw simplicity of toddlerhood created a moment that resonated far beyond the Capitol steps. Social media lit up instantly. "We're all Mirabelle today," one user joked, while another called her America's sweetheart in Band-Aids. Memes, GIFs, and short clips of her calm demeanor flooded timelines. It wasn't just her adorableness, it was how unaffected she was by everything around her. The vice president's oath, the sea of suits, the flashing cameras, none of it altered her tiny routine. Beside JD stood his wife, Usha Vance, holding both her daughter and the Bible used for the swearing-in. Dressed in a soft pink Oscar de Nob, La Renta coat, with a scarf gently framing her shoulders, she looked elegant, composed, and quietly powerful. Just 2 nights earlier, she'd turned heads at the vice president's dinner at the National Gallery of Art in a strapless velvet gown. But here, her gaze was fixed not on the cameras or the crowd, but on Mirabelle, whose presence seemed to ground the entire moment. Their sons, Ewan and Vivek, dressed in matching navy suits and ties, stood just a few steps away, their small faces caught between excitement and awe. The whole family, carefully poised yet visibly touched by the moment, radiated something rarely seen in politics: genuine emotion. And yet there was something else, something barely noticeable to most, but impossible to ignore once seen. JD's voice, steady throughout the speech, faltered ever so slightly when he thanked his family. His eyes found Mirabelle again and lingered. After the event, staffers would describe a quiet moment backstage where JD held his daughter tightly, his hand gently resting on her head as Usha brushed a single tear from her cheek. From that moment, something shifted, not just in how the public viewed the Vance family, but in how the Vances presented themselves. At their next appearance, Mirabelle no longer wore cartoon band-aids. Her outfit was more coordinated, her posture surprisingly composed for a toddler. It wasn't staged, but it was different. With each step into the public eye, Mirabelle's image seemed to evolve, as did the balance JD and Usha Vance tried to maintain between private parenting and public scrutiny. This wasn't just a case of a toddler outgrowing a habit. Her next appearance revealed a child dressed with precise attention to detail. Hair pinned back, outfit pristine, no band-aids in sight, and no thumb in her mouth. Was this a natural progression, or a carefully curated shift? And who made that choice? The little girl, or the grown-ups guiding her path? Stick with us as we peel back the layers of the Vance family's new reality. Mirabelle wasn't the only Vance child present at her father's historic inauguration. Her brothers, Ewan and Vivek, stood beside her in matching blue suits and ties, proudly watching as their father, J.D. Vance, was sworn in as one of the youngest vice presidents in U.S. history. But while much of the attention was on JD, another figure quietly made history that day: his wife, Usha Vance, who became the first Indian American Second Lady. Usha's journey to this moment began far from the political stage. Born to Indian immigrants and raised in the quiet suburbs of San Diego, she carved out her own path, earning both her undergraduate and law degrees from Yale. That's where she met J.D. Vance, a Marine Corps veteran from a struggling working-class background in Middletown, Ohio. Their meeting was not just the start of a love story, but the beginning of a transformation that would eventually reshape J.D.'s life, and arguably, the political landscape of the country. J.D. often refers to Usha as his spirit guide, and for good reason. When he arrived at Yale Law School, he was plagued by self-doubt and the weight of his past. He wrote in his 2016 best-selling memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, that it was Usha who helped him find his footing in a world he felt he didn't belong in. She taught him the small things, like which fork to use at formal dinners, and the big ones, like how to manage the internal chaos that came from a childhood filled with trauma and instability. Their contrasting backgrounds didn't divide them. Instead, they became the glue of a powerful partnership. Charles Tyler, a Yale classmate who witnessed their relationship unfold, described the couple as a blend of opposites who brought out the best in each other. While J.D. struggled with a sense of alienation at Yale, Usha understood how to navigate elite spaces and helped guide him through the unwritten rules of the institution. Before politics, J.D.'s journey took him from military service to corporate, law, and then to venture capitalism. But even as his career took sharp turns, Usha remained his constant, an anchor of logic, strength, and unwavering belief in his potential. When J.D. launched a long-shot Senate bid, it was Usha who quietly worked behind the scenes, juggling motherhood, a demanding legal career, and the challenges of public scrutiny. Her professional resume is just as impressive as her husband's. Usha worked as a corporate litigator at Munger, Tolles & Olson in San Francisco, a firm known for its progressive ethos. At the same time, her legal work extended to clerking for conservative heavyweights like Chief Justice John Roberts and Brett Kavanaugh before his appointment to the Supreme Court. Her career, much like her personal life, refuses to fit into a single political mold. For much of JD's rise in the public eye, Usha remained in the background by choice. Friends say she was driven by a desire to protect their young children, aged 7, 4, and 3, from the chaos of the campaign trail. She rarely spoke in public, but when she did, her words resonated. During a Fox News interview and again at the party conference where she introduced JD, Usha pulled back the curtain on their private life. She spoke of a man who carried the weight of childhood wounds few could understand, a man who had to learn to manage his anger and insecurities, and a husband who, over time, had even embraced her vegetarian lifestyle by learning to cook Indian dishes. She didn't just stand beside him, she shaped him. According to JD, she was instrumental in helping him process the rage and confusion buried deep inside him. He confessed in Hillbilly Elegy that it wasn't just about learning to control himself. It was about her learning how to help him do so. Their marriage, while rooted in deep love, is also built on intellectual respect and a willingness to disagree. Usha has never hesitated to voice her own views, even when they diverged from JD's more conservative positions. A decade ago, she was a registered Democrat, and she has never pretended to adopt her husband's politics wholesale. In one interview, she made it clear, while their values align on many things, they don't agree on everything, and that's never shaken her faith in his integrity. That honesty became especially important when old comments from JD resurfaced in July 2024. In one particularly viral moment, he had referred to certain Democratic politicians as childless cat ladies. The backlash was swift, but it was Usha's calm, reasoned defense that helped douse the flames. She reframed the remarks as a clumsy attempt to spotlight the struggles of working families, asking critics to view the comments in context rather than isolation. Though she avoids the spotlight, Usha Vance is far from a passive political spouse. Within the Trump administration, her influence is real. Trusted by the president himself, she has been quietly handed responsibilities that extend beyond ceremonial duties. What exactly those tasks are remains behind closed doors, but insiders say her steady judgment and legal intellect have made her an indispensable presence within the vice president's orbit. In a world where political partnerships often resemble transactions or performances, the bond between JD and Usha Vance stands apart, deep, complex, and forged through years of transformation. Continuing her remarkable journey, Usha Vance extended her influence from domestic politics to global sports diplomacy when she arrived in Turin, Italy, to lead the U.S. delegation at the opening ceremony of the Special Olympics World Winter Games. Amid the snowy backdrop of this global event, which brings together over 1,500 athletes from roughly 100 nations, Usha stood as a beacon of competence and warmth. With 8 members of President Trump's administration by her side, including influential figures like Fox News host Rachel Campos Duffy and key advisors such as Boris Epin and Trent Michael Moore, the delegation embodied the spirit of unity and excellence that defines the Special Olympics. The Winter Games, held every 2 years and alternating between summer and winter editions, once again highlighted the remarkable talents of athletes with intellectual disabilities. The United States sent a team of around 160 representatives from 42 states, ready to showcase their skills and determination on an international stage. This event, which was a winter edition, set the stage for future gatherings like the upcoming Special Olympics World Summer Games in October 2027 in Santiago, Chile, a landmark meeting scheduled to take place in President Trump's 3rd year of his 2nd presidential term. Earlier that week, Usha had been seen attending President Trump's speech in front of Congress, a high-profile appearance that underscored her vital role within the administration. Her journey from those intense political moments to representing American athletes abroad reflects a unique blend of diplomatic acumen and personal commitment to causes that transcend partisan lines. As the first Indian-American Second Lady, Usha has continuously drawn on her diverse background, her formative years in San Diego, and her distinguished Yale education, to propel forward initiatives that empower communities both at home and abroad. In Turin, her presence resonated not only as a symbol of American excellence, but also as a reminder that leadership can take many forms, whether in the solemn corridors of Capitol Hill or on an international stage celebrating human potential. The delegation's efforts in Italy, observed by global media and athletes alike, reflected a broader narrative of inclusion and resilience. It was a testament to how determined leadership, rooted in personal experience and a drive to innovate, can effectively bridge diverse worlds. Every step of the way, Usha Vance has proven that her role extends far beyond ceremonial appearances. She is a vigorous advocate and a strategist who continuously shapes the policies and programs that uplift the American spirit in multifaceted arenas. However, what truly fuels Usha Vance's ambition, and how did she become such a force? Stay glued to your screen. Usha Vance's remarkable journey, yet behind the composed presence on the world stage, stands a woman whose story is as layered and compelling as the role she now holds. Usha Vance, Second Lady of the United States, may not seek the limelight, but her journey into American public life is far from ordinary. At 39, she occupies a space often viewed as ceremonial, but those who know her best insist her influence has been anything but passive, especially in the rapid political ascent of her husband, Vice President J.D. Vance. Born in the working class, suburbs of San Diego, California, Usha Chilukuri Vance is the daughter of Indian immigrants who came to the United States from Andhra Pradesh with dreams of opportunity. Her father, an aerospace engineer, and her mother, a molecular biologist, encouraged academic excellence, and Usha followed through with quiet intensity. Her path led her to Yale University, where she earned a degree in history, and then across the Atlantic to Cambridge University, where she was named a Gates Scholar and completed her Master of Philosophy in Early Modern History. But it was at Yale Law School in 2010 that her life took a turn that would intertwine with national politics. There, in a discussion group on the social decline of white working-class America, she met J.D. Vance. Their connection began intellectually, shaped by intense debates and a shared curiosity about cultural identity, economic struggle, and the meaning of home. It was in those conversations that the seeds of J.D.'s best-selling memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, were sown, a book that would later inspire a Ron Howard-directed film and launch Vance into political prominence. While J.D.'s rise was steep, many in His circle credit Usha's grounding influence as vital to his transformation, from a troubled child in Ohio's Rust Belt to a senator, and now, vice president. Her peers remember her not just for her academic brilliance, though she consistently ranked at the top of her law school class, but for her kindness. In a fiercely competitive environment, Usha was known for sharing notes, mentoring peers through clerkship applications, and never treating others as rivals. She was just someone who always offered help when she didn't need to, said one former classmate. She didn't see success as something to hoard. Her judicial clerkships were among the most coveted in the country, eventually leading her to work alongside Supreme Court justices. Yet, through all her academic and professional accomplishments, Usha remained someone grounded in her roots, drawing quiet strength from her family and upbringing. In an interview with Fox News, she explained that much of the calm she brings to her household today is owed to the security she felt growing up, surrounded by a supportive family, and the steady reassurance that things would turn out all right. Her husband has often acknowledged this influence. J.D. Vance, candid about his turbulent youth, once admitted feeling humbled by her achievements. "She has the kind of resume that makes mine feel inadequate," he remarked. In Andhra Pradesh, Usha's journey is regarded as almost legendary. Her relatives speak with deep pride about the little girl from San Diego, who rose to prominence in American political life. One of them, her great-grandaunt, Professor Santama Chilukuri, a physicist in India, told the BBC that Usha's success wasn't surprising, as she came from a long line of Hindu scholars. "What she's achieved happens to 1 in a million," she said, reflecting on how rare it is for someone to rise so high in a foreign land. Usha Vance represents a quieter kind of power, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. She moves with intention, balancing her public role with deep personal convictions shaped by culture, education, and a strong sense of duty. Her story continues to unfold, but even now, it serves as a powerful reminder that influence doesn't always come from standing at the podium. It can also come from steady hands behind the curtain. The women who shaped J.D. Vance. What followed? Next, though far from dramatic, added a new layer to the growing conversation about Vance, not just as a public figure, but as a product of complex, resilient women. In his 2016 memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, J.D. Vance didn't simply reflect on hardship. He painted his older sister as a rare anchor in the storm, a woman who chose, deliberately and bravely, not to pass on the pain that had once defined their upbringing. Her choice to love, to build, and to remain in one marriage with a kind man who treated her well wasn't just personal, it was in Vance's eyes an act of quiet heroism. He admired how she built a life that directly rejected the dysfunction of their childhood, resolving to be the kind of mother and wife they rarely witnessed growing up. That admiration wasn't fleeting. Years later, during the heat of the 2022 Senate campaign, and especially when he became Donald Trump's running mate in 2025, Vance's relationship with the women who raised him drew renewed attention. These were not footnotes in his past. They were the foundation of his worldview. His opinions on marriage, family, and childhood suffering were not abstract theories. They were deeply personal beliefs shaped by memories most would rather forget. He had lived through the chaos of his mother's addiction, a life marked by unpredictable outbursts, one of which, he wrote, ended with her pulling over the car to physically punish him. Yet even in such turmoil, Vance never lost sight of the influence of his grandmother, Mama, whose volatile yet lasting marriage to his grandfather left him with a complicated belief that enduring a broken marriage might, in some cases, cause less harm to children than divorce itself. These lessons, absorbed early and deeply, would go on to form the roots of his socially conservative stance. His Aunt Lori, who took him in when his mother could not, once told NBC, "Everybody has problems. Everyone's family has dysfunction." But what mattered, she implied, was how a person handled it. She believed Vance had truly seen what it meant for a child to struggle and to survive. In interviews, Vance didn't shy away from this. Whether seated on a campaign plane or beside his wife Usha, he frequently returned to one key truth. He was raised by strong women. His grandmother, mother, sister, and aunt all shaped his lens on the world, particularly on what families endure and what they can become. And while his critics seized on his pointed remarks, like those mocking childless women in politics. Vance insisted these weren't meant as sweeping attacks. To him, they were conversation starters, ways to ignite deeper discussions about what kinds of policies actually support young families, especially those raised in poverty. His deeply personal lens, informed by growing up with a single mom and the grandmother who stepped in, colored every stance he took. By the time he secured his Senate seat in Ohio 2 years earlier, J.D. Vance's name had already become synonymous with an unwavering anti-abortion stance. Though he'd once supported national restrictions, he eventually aligned with Trump's position, letting states decide. While the senator's political views continued to spark debate, it was someone far smaller, yet unexpectedly magnetic, who began to steal the spotlight. So why did the public suddenly become captivated by his toddler daughter, and what does it reveal about the family's new reality? Stay with us. The mystery behind Mirabelle Vance's transformation. Not long after Mirabelle Vance was spotted gently sucking her thumb during the January 2025 inauguration, the youngest Vance quickly became a subject of public fascination. Weeks later, her name was trending again, but this time, it wasn't because of an adorable wave or picture-perfect smile. Something had changed, something subtle, yet striking, that made people look twice. Her reappearance caught everyone off guard. It wasn't just the natural shift of a child growing up. It was the quiet way she returned to the public eye, and how somehow everything about her felt different. What began as a lighthearted interest in a toddler during a political ceremony had slowly evolved into a deeper mix of curiosity, concern, and awe. People weren't just watching Mirabelle anymore. They were asking, what happened to her? In a world where the children of public figures often fade into the background, Mirabelle Vance had always managed to shine through. Her playful spirit in the middle of stiff political moments charmed everyone. But this time, her return didn't bring smiles alone. It stirred emotions. And not just in the crowd, but in her parents, J.D. and Usha Vance, whose reactions gave everyone pause. Something had clearly happened. Their composure cracked just enough to spark 1,000 theories. J.D., usually steady and firm, appeared on the verge of tears. Usha, always graceful and poised, seemed delicate, like something had touched her deeply, maybe even shaken her. Nobody could say exactly what it was, but the silence from the Vance family only made the guessing louder. What could have happened behind the scenes that led to such an emotional response? Had Mirabelle gone through something difficult? Had she overcome a challenge? Or was it something more subtle, something only a parent would notice? The internet tried to fill in the blanks. One of the more grounded theories was that Mirabelle simply looked older. Not in an obvious way, but in that sudden shift that hits parents when their child walks into a room looking like someone they haven't fully met yet. Maybe it was a haircut that framed her face differently. Maybe she wore something bold or mature. Even the tiniest fashion change, when you're used to seeing your daughter in bows and soft colors, can hit like a lightning bolt. The crowd might have seen a stylish little girl, but J.D. and Usha? They saw the passing of time. And that realization alone can be overwhelming. It sneaks up on you. One day you're brushing your child's hair, and the next, she's choosing her own clothes, expressing opinions, speaking with a kind of clarity that makes you pause. That moment, when your baby feels like a person with her own story, can take your breath away. Maybe that's what happened to J.D. and Usha. Maybe Mirabelle did something so small and beautiful, a gesture, a sentence, a smile, that cracked open a dam of emotions. Of course, others have their own interpretations. Some believe there was a health scare Mirabelle quietly overcame, and her appearance was filled with relief and gratitude. Others say she may have achieved something private, something she shared only with her parents, that made them see her in a new light. It's also possible that she said something incredibly thoughtful. Children can sometimes say the most powerful things without knowing it. One sentence, one expression of love or insight, can cut right through a parent's heart. Still, no one from the Vance family has confirmed or denied any of it, and that mystery only fuels the fascination. It's not just about Mirabelle anymore, it's about what she represents. Change, growth, a glimpse of the future. The moment a child stops being simply your baby and starts becoming her own person. Maybe JD and Usha were caught off guard by that transformation. Maybe they weren't ready to see her that way just yet. But when she reappeared, confident, composed, and strikingly different, it was impossible to look away. That quiet little moment became something bigger. A reminder that even in the most public lives, it's often the private moments, the ones you can't explain, that leave the deepest mark. And just like that, Mirabelle Vance, still so young, still so full of wonder, sparked a wave of reflection, emotion, and admiration. Not just from strangers on the internet, but from the two people who know her best, and who suddenly looked at her as if seeing her for the very first time. A glimpse into legacy, whatever Mirabelle did or said that day, the emotion it stirred in her parents was unmistakable, and it wasn't just about the moment itself. Coming back to Mirabelle's transformation that caught so many off guard, it might have made JD and Usha Vance realize how fast everything is moving. Not long ago, she was a baby cradled in their arms, quietly watching the world go by. Now, she was walking beside them, a little more curious, a little more confident, still small, but already showing signs of becoming her own person. For JD, a man whose story began in the quiet struggles of Middletown, Ohio, the image of his daughter, present at a major political event, must have stirred something profound. The author of Hillbilly Elegy may have never envisioned a day when his child would appear alongside him in such a symbolic moment. And for Usha, who built her life through grit and education, watching Mirabelle step into that space may have triggered a wave of pride, and maybe a glimpse of what the future might hold. One online observer put it best. What if JD and Usha realize their family legacy is already unfolding before their eyes? It might sound dramatic, but their expressions that day made it hard to dismiss. Whatever really happened in that brief emotional instant, it clearly meant more than words could explain. Inside the viral moment that won't go away, as speculation swirls around that tearful clip of JD and Usha Vance, one thing is clear. This wasn't just another cute family photo op. Coming back to Mirabelle's transformation that sparked the internet frenzy, it wasn't about some sudden personality shift or dramatic reveal. It was the kind of moment only parents truly understand, when your child, once small enough to cradle, suddenly stands before the world, holding her own in a space meant for seasoned adults. In January 2025, during the vice presidential inauguration, 3-year-old Mirabelle Vance didn't have to say a word to steal the spotlight. Maybe it was a wave, a smile, or just the way she looked around, curious, calm, unbothered by the cameras. JD and Usha's emotional reaction, now frozen in pixels and replayed endlessly, likely came from something much simpler than people think: the overwhelming beauty of watching your child, in real time, step into history. Sure, the internet loves a spectacle. But what people saw as a mysterious, symbolic moment may have just been a deeply personal parenting experience. After all, how often do parents watch their toddler become part of a moment millions are witnessing? Now, the attention has shifted. Will we see more of Mirabelle? Some political families hide their children from public life, while others accept the attention as part of the package. JD and Usha may want to protect her from the pressures of growing up in the public eye, but Mirabelle's natural charm might make that nearly impossible. Even as her older siblings have remained relatively unseen, the curiosity around the youngest Vance continues to grow. Whether it's through candid appearances or accidental spotlight moments, she's quickly becoming one of the most talked about children in politics. For Usha, now the second lady, juggling this sudden public interest with motherhood won't be easy. Known for her grace and strength, she may need to decide how much of her family life she's willing to share. Will she take a quieter role to focus on the kids, or embrace the visibility and show what motherhood looks like under the national? Len's JD, now vice president, faces a different kind of balancing act between the demands of office and the pull of fatherhood. Will he keep his family behind the scenes, or let America see more of the man beyond the title? Either way, the Vances are no longer just a political family. They've become a public fascination. But what do you think really moved JD and Usha to tears? Was it history or something far more personal? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.